Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cognitive Tennis. Today, not raining. It's actually quite foggy. It's been like this for like the past week. I'm not really sure why. This doesn't really happen in Vancouver too much, but at least it's not raining. So again, this week, since it's the off season, there wasn't too much going on tour. Nothing too exciting on the ATP website. Nothing too much going on. The players are just mostly prepping for next season and getting their practices in and taking it easy. Last week, there were articles floating around mentioned that Nadal had actually said that Djokovic had reached a higher level than Federer ever had throughout his career, and that Federer was a great champion in terms of his records, and he has the stats and the proof to back that up. But Djokovic overall had reached a higher level of tennis than Roger had throughout his career. And in a way, I think this is true. I think Djokovic at his prime looked almost invincible. There was actually one match between Roger and Djokovic at the Australian Open. I believe it was the semi-finals a couple years ago, where Djokovic completely just smashed Roger, and Roger managed to somehow squeak out one set against Djokovic in that match. But that was the best I've seen Djokovic play maybe in his entire career. He was playing just absolutely ridiculous. I hadn't seen anyone play that good ever, maybe including Roger. But in my opinion, being the greatest of all time encapsulates everything to do with a tennis player, not just your highest level of tennis that you've played at some point in your career. And with that, I kind of wanted to make this video not just to defend Roger, but also to mention why I think Roger is the greatest of all time. And specifically, what are the top 5 things that make Roger the greatest of all time? What is it that makes Roger such a good champion and the fans' favorite for the past 15 consecutive years? Something like that. I mean, if you're even nominated, let alone win the fans' favorite award that many times, there must be a reason why. There must be something that people like about Roger Federer. And I don't think we've had a player in history that's been liked so much as Roger. So why is that? What makes Roger such a good champion? So let's dive into the top 5 reasons why Roger Federer is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. So let's talk about the first reason why I think Roger is the greatest of all time. I think one of the huge things that makes him the greatest of all time is his versatility. His ability to change styles depending on who he's playing against, and also just the amount that he has in his arsenal. So many different shots, and he's added to that arsenal so much over the past few years. Oh, it's actually pretty cold, as you can see. Super foggy. There's like no visibility right now. But this is one of my favorite places to come. More in the summer though. Not as great now, but it still looks amazing. One thing I absolutely love about Federer is that he's always learning, he's always tinkering, he's always trying to get better. He's never fully satisfied with how he's playing. He's always looking to tinker and add new shots, and he's always looking to grow as a tennis player. Back in the day, Federer was a little bit more predictable. Everyone knew that his backhand was his weaker side. He liked to play from the baseline, but he didn't really have the net game that he has today. He started coming in a lot more. He improved his net game tremendously. He's made points so much shorter, quicker, and efficient. There's a story of how Federer actually first tried the saber in practice, and his coach, I think it was either Severin Luthi or Stefan Edberg at the time, said that he should actually try it in a match. And Roger was kind of confused, and he was like, really? And his coach was like, yeah, well, why not try it in a match? And I remember when Federer tried it a couple times against Djokovic, and it actually did work. He threw him off, and he didn't do it just on small points. He did it in big moments, and it really caught his opponents off guard. So even something as simple as that just shows how much Roger's willing to adapt his game to different players and to try and catch players off guard. He's always looking to make himself just a little bit better. Most recently we saw, especially at the Australian Open, he started flattening out his backhand a lot more, and now players are actually trying to avoid his backhand a little bit more. We've seen how much of a tactical advantage that has been against Nadal, and how he's completely managed to turn that head-to-head around this year. So overall, those small changes, I think, are the number one reason, maybe, why Federer is the greatest of all time. Number 2, he's a model on and off the court. Everyone knows that Roger Federer is known for his technique. Whenever coaches model a certain player to show a particular shot, it's usually always Roger Federer, whether it's his backhand, his forehand, his serve, his volleys. Not only that, he has such a variety of shots too. But it's not just the shots that are impressive. The accuracy on his serve, the way you can't read where he's going from his toss because it's the same every time. His movement and his balance are impeccable. His mental strength under pressure. And I think all of these components combined make Roger Federer one of the hardest players to come up against. But it's not just on the court that he's so great. He's also such a good role model off the court. The way he respects other players, the way he mentors the younger players on tour, the way he treats his fans, and the way he talks about others, as well as his work-life balance. It's just so amazing to see someone that well-rounded in all areas of his life. He's just such an amazing role model. The third thing we have to take into account is his longevity. Roger turned pro in 1999 and he's played on tour for almost 20 years now. And I think what's so impressive about Roger is even after just his first few years on tour, he won his first major at Wimbledon in 2003, and since then he's won 7 more Wimbledons and 18 more majors. But I don't think that's even the most impressive part. I think the most impressive part about his entire career was how he came back in 2017 at the age of 35. I don't think anyone else in tennis history has had that much success coming back at such an old age for tennis. To come back at the age of 35 and win a major after you've been out for 6 months and had to beat 4 top 10 players, including 3 5-setters, including his longtime rival Nadal, down a break in the 5th, and he was able to win that and carry that momentum on and win the Indian Wells Miami back-to-back. And not just that, but to have a full year of impressive tennis at that age, even though he missed the clay court season. That comeback to me was the greatest comeback in tennis history. But I can name tons of players that have had long careers, and I can name some players who have had long careers and consistent results, but not any that have had as consistent results as Roger for such a long period of time, which is why number 4 is consistency. And let me just give you some numbers as to how ridiculous Roger Federer's consistency is. Roger made 36 consecutive Grand Slam quarterfinals, 23 consecutive Grand Slam semifinals, and 10 consecutive Grand Slam finals. Just the 36 consecutive quarterfinals is 9 years in a row where he made the quarterfinals or better at majors, without falling short of the quarterfinals in even one in 9 years. That's just mind-blowing. He's made 29 Grand Slam finals in his career, and he's won 19 of those 29. He was number 1 for a record 302 weeks, including 237 consecutive weeks. Just think about how long 237 weeks is. That's over 4 years being at number 1 in a row. It's just insane. It hurts my head to think about these numbers. And Roger wasn't just consistent in the Grand Slams, he was consistent at all the other tournaments as well. He has a record of beating top 10 players 26 consecutive times. I mean, these numbers have to at least make him be considered as the greatest of all time. And lastly, you can have a long career, you can be consistent, but you still need the great results. And Roger Federer definitely has the records and results to back up his consistency and longevity, which is why number 5 is record books. Sure, there are other players that have had a career Grand Slam. Sure, there may be other players that have won more Masters 1000s than Roger has. But let me briefly give you some of the numbers that you're probably already familiar with. 19-time Grand Slam champion, including a record 8 Wimbledon titles. As I mentioned before, a record 302 weeks at number 1, including 237 consecutive weeks. 5 consecutive US Open titles. Oldest year-end number 2 ranked player in history. He reached all 4 Grand Slam finals in one season 3 times. He had 24 consecutive tournament finals won. He has a record 87% grass court win percentage. And the last that I'll share with you is Roger's won a record 6 ATP World Tour Finals titles. And that's the tournament where the top 8 play in round robin format. I actually talked about that one in an earlier video, so check that out if you're unfamiliar with the World Tour Finals. But these records are just crazy to wrap your head around. And of course, records are huge when considering the greatest of all time. So there you go, those are my top 5 reasons why Roger Federer is the greatest of all time. Be sure to comment saying whether you think Roger is the greatest of all time or not, or who you think might be the greatest of all time. Before I sign off, I have a special surprise for next week's video. For the next 10 days, I'll be traveling to England and France, and next week's video will have an England theme. So stay tuned next week if you want to see that. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.